Welcome to an incomplete guide to personal growth. We invite you to take a breath and take a listen to our podcast that explores the wonder, humor, challenges, and sometimes those self-inflicted wounds on the journey of personal growth.
Our weekly podcast conversations include stories, resources, and tools that you can incorporate into your daily life. We're the mother-daughter duo of Sydney West
and Kelly Arundel.
Hi, Mom.
Hey, Sydney.
How are you?
I'm good.
So we'll have her introduce herself some more in a little bit. But we have a special guest, Ana Maldonado. Woo!
Yay.
To talk about family boundaries, all that fun stuff for the holidays. But before we get there, another aspect of holidays.
Food.
So let's name first something good. Let's name our favorite dish on the Thanksgiving table. Mine is probably... Mom always makes this broccoli and rice and like cheese casserole. Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Stuffing. And
What?
I get to eat all of it because nobody else likes it.
Nobody else likes it. Oh my God.
I'm a stuffing gal too.
Really?
Yeah. And it's like the only time of year we ever eat it.
Yes.
Like,
That's it. It doesn't show up at Christmas.
Yeah,
That's
you
right.
don't make stuffing in April. You know?
No.
For Easter or anything. No.
What?
Easter stuffing.
Easter stuffing. I'm going to do that just to bug the family. Thank you, Anna, for that suggestion.
No. Oh my God.
And it's funny because there's stuff that I make, like I make that, and then I make sweet potatoes, and I just put, little marshmallow stuff or whatever on top.
Nobody else
and I'm
eats
the
it.
only one that eats it, but I make it why?
For you.
It's supposed to be colorful on the table.
Oh my gosh. My least favorite dish is probably the turkey.
Me too. Oh no. I go ham all the way.
Yes.
If we have the option, ham all the way. With some applesauce on top.
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah.
Applesauce on top of ham.
Yeah.
be
Some
good.
sweet
I have
savory.
not done that.
Yay.
Pork chops and applesauce. I
Yeah.
can do that,
Ooh.
right?
Yeah, that is
I've not
good.
done that.
What's your least favorite? What?
Pumpkin pie.
Pumpkin pie?
Oh, controversial.
That is. I like that you whispered it.
I'll take the whipped cream.
That is so good. Oh my gosh. Well, yeah. So Thanksgiving's coming up. We'll see what's on the table. and
Yeah.
What we like.
Some marshmallow sweet potatoes.
God, the marshmallows too. Why?
I always make sweet potatoes like salty. So they had it last year. It was really good. If they're watching, it was really good. I promise. No, I'm kidding. It was it was really good because I don't really like marshmallows, but I was impressed.
Yes.
It was very good. Rachma's family. Shout out to Rachma.
Yes.
I'm just gonna get like 20 shout outs.
Yes. 20 shout-outs. The whole podcast.
My
We'll take
mom,
it.
my dad, my brother Jorge.
Shout out to everybody.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We don't give shout outs because they don't like us very much. No, I'm just teasing.
Oh my goodness. You guys are funny. Okay.
Yes.
So if you would just kind of give us your little background, tell us a little about yourself to our listeners.
Yeah. So my name is Ana. I am an LPC Associate, but I'll be finishing that this year. Basically, that's like a 2-year track where you accrue hours under somebody and then you become fully licensed, and that's super exciting. Yay, insurance companies! I can't wait.
Yay. Yes.
Woo, BCBS! Yeah. But yeah, so I've been a therapist now for almost 3 years. Super exciting. I work at Counseling for Life, and they're amazing. They like deal with my shenanigans. And with that too, I'm also an EMDR specialist. So so I've specialized in trauma, and it wasn't really because I wanted to necessarily have a full caseload of that stuff, but I really want to be able to handle anything that comes in my office. Jokes on me is that like people don't stop surprising you. So
Oh, I'm sure there's plenty of drama.
So I never stop learning. And so, but it's been awesome. I love my job, and it's definitely stretched me too in terms of like making sure I take care of myself. The moment you're not okay, it shows up at work so much.
I bet.
But it's great, and my clients teach me so much. So shout out to all of them too. I cannot give names.
No names.
No names, but they're awesome.
Oh my god. We are big fans of EMDR.
I was going to say, and we'll put a link to our page
Yeah.
about EMDR because it's really an incredible
good.
tool.
awesome.
So
Yeah.
we'll put a link to
We're
that
big
because not
fans.
everybody's familiar, but
Yeah,
it's
a
a
whole
great,
other world.
it's a great tool.
It
Whole
is.
other
Yes.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
So we're here to talk about a lot of people have family issues around the holidays. No shock.
Yeah.
But-
they have them all year, but they're heightened.
Yeah.
Because
At the holidays.
Absolutely.
often
Yes.
they're expected or everybody comes
Yeah.
together, right?
And so I guess so people don't feel so alone. Is it common for clients to come to you with these issues?
Yes, in all caps. Yes. I thought this was so funny when I started working. It turns out like our peak season is actually right before the holidays.
Really?
Is it?
Everyone is like, time for therapy. Yeah. It's like, the marathon of like Thanksgiving and Christmas just like brings up a lot for
Yeah.
people. And then there's this additional fact that like usually a lot of grief comes up. So I don't think we think about that, but like the first Christmas without someone, or a lot of people weirdly have like tragedies around holidays. Yeah, I had a client this past week who their family friend actually just got in a car accident, and it was on the way to pick up Halloween candy. Yeah. So please pray for her. But yeah, so it's
It's
a hard time.
wild time.
A hard time
Yeah.
for people. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So why do you, I guess, so I'm guessing you feel holidays kind of heighten
Absolutely.
discourse. Do you know
Yeah.
why? Do you have a sense of maybe why?
Yeah. I think holidays carry a lot of meaning for people. They're very sacred, and we protect sacred things, or we get defensive over sacred things, right? And so there's already probably a sense of like defensiveness or protection just happening year round, kind of like what you were saying. But I think because there's a heightened meaning to these things, it kind of shows up more. And I kind of thought a good approach to that question may be talking about like different family structures and family systems, because then you'll kind of know what you're looking at, what the problems happen.
Yeah,
Perfect.
let's do it.
Yes. So obviously there's like healthy families, which would be like the goal. And these are people who are able to really celebrate others and celebrate their individuality while still having a sense of community and union, right? So shared traditions, but honoring that there's differences or that there's different ideas or a flexibility around those things, right? And then we have enmeshed and disengaged families, which are kind of on opposite extremes of both of those like good qualities that we talked about independence and celebrating independence and having unity. So an enmeshed family are ones that are too close. So that would be like being overly involved or smothering. And we want to also be culturally mindful, because like different cultures maybe have different like manifestations of how family life is. But even within cultures that are more collectivistic, you shouldn't feel unable to be yourself, right? Or you shouldn't feel kind of this sense of being unsupported to be yourself, right? So like kind of some trademarks about an enmeshed family is that they have very little boundaries. So these are the ones who kind of barge into your room or borrow your stuff without asking.
Yeah.
Wow, there's like a knowing smile happening.
No, you don't.
No, I'm just joking. I'm assessing.
I know, right?
I'm noticing. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, so that's some examples. This also might be kind of like over maybe unsolicited advice that you wouldn't want. And then another trademark about those little boundaries is fluid roles. So these are adults who maybe expect their children to parent them. Right? And so that's kind of something that you can see in those enmeshed families. And then with that, even though there's so much support, seemingly, right? Because there's so much involvement and so much joy to be around each other. Oftentimes expressing emotions then is restricted into something specific, right? So you're allowed to express emotions or express your individual self as long as you stay in this box of what it means to be this type of family, right? Like what it means to be a Maldonado. I'll throw my family. We're pretty healthy, I would hope. But that's just an example. And so that's individuality is seen as threatening.
Okay.
Is basically kind of like a summary of enmeshed families. And then there's a lot of usually like dysregulation. The confusion of roles includes maybe like showing too much. So these are parents who maybe fought in front of their children or screamed in front of their children, or kind of like mom would vent to their daughter about how awful their husband is.
Right.
And blah, 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 blah. Right. So that's just like, if any of those experiences resonate with you, you may come from an enmeshed family. And so during the holidays, kind of what would this typically look like if you're still having a hard time pinning it down? Probably a common thing you would run into is pushback or guilting or manipulation around setting boundaries, right? So if you wanted to have some space, they would be like, why don't you want to be with us? Right? Like this whole kind of intense response probably, or they would have some pushback towards like new traditions, or if you want to maybe have some more individuation with like maybe your new family, like your children and all that kind of stuff, they may have a lot of pushback and kind of that guilting. So that's enmeshed families. And then there's disengaged families. That would be the other extreme, where they're too far apart and they're too large of a boundary. So these are families that maybe support independence too much. There are people who kind of lead you to believe you're not really sought after or supported, and so I have to be independent, and kind of that leads to feelings of isolation and really a lack of intimacy. And so there's little guidance or support. And then when you do have individuation, it's not really, protested against, but it's also not celebrated, right? So everyone's basically doing their own thing all the time to an extreme, right? So that's like another problem. And so they often can be rigid, unfun, and perfectionistic. During the holidays, kind of what that might look like is just a sense of awkwardness, maybe empty connection, not really knowing like how to bond with each other. And like if you come from a disengaged family, that might be really frustrating. It might bring up a lot of grief for you, grieving that you don't have family traditions that actually lead to deeper intimacy, right? Or all of that kind of stuff. And so that's something that you might have to work through, is grieving that you don't have the family you wish you had. And quite honestly, that's kind of most of the holidays will bring that up for people, for most people, or the holidays will bring that up for most people. But so those are kind of like the two. And so within holiday stuff, like with a disengaged family, you may desire more, and they might kind of be like, why do you keep wanting this? Or, right. So there's kind of like this longing that's not being filled. And with an enmeshed family, you might want more space, and they feel very threatened that you don't want to kind of fit into this role that maybe your whole life you've actually been fitting into, right? And
you may not.
You may not, now that you're a little older and stuff. Man. So
that is fascinating, and I'm sitting here going, "Oh, that family." You just look and
yes,
it kind of. I was thinking about that because my own mom didn't want anything to change.
Yeah.
This is the way, and the guilting and that, and so I'm like a non-guilter. I don't believe in that. But it helped me to go, oh, what are my boundaries? What am I doing or not doing to my kids that I don't, let them breathe and to do that, you know?
You wanted to give that individuality as a gift to your family.
And just that, and that's not slam against my mom. It's
but
what it was, and how she was. And one of the things that kind of goes in with what you're saying is, and I heard this, that who you were in your family as a child, when you go back, it's like they assume you
are the same,
and you assume that role. But what happens when you don't? Right? And go, wait a minute, that's
not me anymore.
That's not me. And how do I let others do that too? Because I caught myself going, well, they're just going to do baby, and they're going to be what they're. And then, oh, they're not. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I feel like that can be. I feel like that transition can be hard. I think, especially for parents.
Oh, absolutely.
For parents and siblings, I'm thinking too, right?
Yeah. Well, and it goes back to this idea of like there's something sacred happening, and some people are a little less like controlling over that than others, right? And so some people have an openness to that, or a willingness to, again, like a healthy family allows for individuality, or allows for someone to adjust and change and grow and all those kinds of things. And a lot of the times, like, if you're breaking the status quo and people have some pushback to that, it's because, like, it feels safe for us to stay the same.
Yes.
Right? And it feels unsafe for you to now be questioning why we're not more intimate as a family, or to be questioning why I don't attend to your needs, right? And sit in your suffering as a parent should, or questioning why we have to do XYZ the exact way, or breaking from that ritual, or whatever the case may be. And so that's kind of what you see underlying that people feel unsafe a lot of the times. And so it helps with having some compassion on them. But with that being said, I think something to be aware of is, like, when you change, it actually forces the rest of your family to change. You're stirring the pot, if you will. And so making sure that you do that in a way that's healthy, and if you can, and hopefully they take that as an invitation to actually grow in their own healthiness too. So there's kind of this concept of, like, if you want healing for your family, the best thing you can do is heal yourself.
Oh, I love that.
You gotta look inward. You know, that is so big to me.
And it's all you can control too, right? Because it can feel really powerless to go into your holidays and being like, I'm stuck in this role, or I'm stuck with this family that's going to act this way. And that might be true for a time or however long, but it's like, you still have the power, though, to determine how this is going to go to an extent, and have those healthy boundaries that allow you to make make sure that you're protecting your own heart throughout the whole process. So.
Yes. Okay.
Speaking of
so with that, yes.
Yes.
So it sounds like these two families are like two extremes. So you have a family that has no boundaries, and you have a family that has too many boundaries.
Yeah.
So can you just give the definition? I feel like the word boundary too is used and people don't really understand.
Yeah.
So can you like give the definition and maybe like an example of what a boundary is?
Yeah. So I actually consulted on a few people with this because I feel like it's such a big question.
It is.
So like one of them kind of described it to me as, and this was like my supervisor. She said it's kind of what you put this in place so that you can maintain a sense of protection over your heart and over your needs, all for the sake of being able to give most fully and freely. Right.
Okay,
And so like a really good analogy is this one time I was reading this story about this dog who would run across like these acres of land that these people owned, and they only really wanted him to stay in like the 1 acre so that they could like see where he was going, but he would go like crazy because he's a dog. And so what they needed to do, because what would end up happening is that he would just like escape and leave, and then they'd scold him, and then the dog was like, what did I do wrong? I'm just running in a field.
Being a dog.
I'm just being a dog. Woof woof, you know. Direct quote. Direct quote. Woof woof. Yeah, but so and then it would like make them upset, and then they were ungrateful for having the dog, and it was this like whole thing, right? And when we don't have boundaries, that tends to be what happens. It, like this thing that was supposed to be enjoyable has now become really stressful or frustrating or sad or whatever the case may be. And what they then did was they bought a shock collar that would like tase him gently.
All
okay.
nice.
In our neighborhood, there's a lot of those.
Yes,
we don't have fences.
Yes, all within the 1 acre line. And so the dog eventually learned like, oh, I can actually only do this much. But once he realized that, he actually had this freedom to play without upsetting his neighbor or his owners. And so there's this ability now to just enjoy within the confines of what everyone is happy with in this particular situation. Right. So I feel like that's like a good kind of way that boundaries are exemplified. Another way that it's been described to me is a gate, which I also really like. So there's kind of this definition of knowing where you are, what starts and what ends as yours, right? Or what is yours and what is not yours. But you have this flexibility to let things in, but it's your decision to do so, right? And so, that's another good. I'm a more of an analogy person. Not much of a Webster, Merriam-Webster girl.
I love it. That's good though. I like that.
Yeah. So that's what I would say is kind of like the summary of boundaries is it helps you know what's yours and to kind of have protection over yourself and your needs, but all for the sake of serving and loving the people around you. And I think that's one thing that people have a misconception of boundaries is they think it's selfish, or they think it's wrong, or they think it's you just like pushing people away, right? But it's really like, how can I actually draw you in closest while making sure it's not going to compromise myself? Because if I'm compromising myself, I'm actually not going to love you well at that point. You know?
Definitely. And I think
that's fascinating.
And I like talking about yourself so much because I think people think boundaries and they make it where, oh, well, this person has to act different, or like you, it's like you can't change the other person's behavior. It's about changing you and your behavior and your response. And I think that's too, it's like, well, they're not doing what I said, so they're like not following my boundary. And it's like, that's not a boundary.
Yes.
So can you give an example? Like, let's say you're at your family and let's say I'm going to use the daughter, mother, whatever. And your mom is like, maybe making comments about your life that you don't like, or maybe giving unsolicited advice. Like, what is a boundary? Like, how would that play out?
Yeah. So I think kind of with what you were saying about, like, some people won't follow your boundary. That is true. Some people won't follow your boundary. But then the question is, okay, then what is the more effective boundary you have to set? And so with kind of this situation that you mentioned, you kind of have to have, like, levels, like, of like, okay, this is like the easiest boundary to set, or like maybe the most like the most like non, like, I don't know how to say it, but
the boat type.
I mean, boundaries are gonna rock the boat. Tough luck, like whatever. Like, that's not why we set them anyways. Like, that's not the point. But but I guess like the most like the least. Like, I don't know how to, I'm going to find a word for it. Anyways, find a word. Yeah, I'll find a word. But the point is like, I would start with like something verbal, right? So, or like you can start with that, right? Like, Mom, I appreciate that you have thoughts about my life, and I also don't feel like this is your place, or I didn't ask, but I appreciate it, whatever. Let's change topics. I would rather not talk about this anymore. Right. So that's another thing too, is like when you set boundaries, this is just like a little practical tip. Because I saw, it was one of your questions. Like, boundaries are going to stir the pot. People initially tend to have pushback because you're changing what feels
things.
Safe and what is the status quo. So, like, if you rock the boat, don't view that as the sign that, like, I shouldn't have done that. That's not true.
Going to rock the boat.
You're probably going to rock the boat, and that's okay. That's okay. But, like, when you set a boundary, something that helps, because people view boundaries as, or it can be perceived as, an attack on oneself. And so if you do it in the most charitable way possible, you can at least walk away with the confidence of, I did that in a way that was kind, and if they're not okay with the thing I've asserted, that's not really my problem, right? Versus if you're aggressive about setting your boundary, you might, like, then you can walk away being like, maybe I was mean, it's not my fault, blah, 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 right? But, like, to have the self-regulation and the calm and the ability to just very kindly, because we don't want to hurt our family's feelings. We're not trying to do that. Like, setting boundaries is important for ourselves, but it shouldn't come at the cost of, like, bulldozing everybody. Hopefully not, right? And if so, usually that says more about how they're experiencing something. But let's make sure we're doing this as kindly as possible. So I like to teach the sandwich method, where you're really nice at first, but then you assert your boundary right in the middle, and then you end kind of on a gentle note, and people still might get offended, right? Because you're still doing a change. But if you kind of give them this image of who they are, right? This understanding of that they're good and that they're loved, usually that can help minimize that defensiveness that people tend to come in with, right? So again, kind of back to that example, right? Definitely. Mom, I'm so grateful that you care about my parenting, or that you care about my children, or that you care about, or that you want the best for my children, recognizing not everyone actually has that. It's maybe a little distorted, but
but it's there.
But it's there. There's a good intention behind what she's doing, right? And so I'm so grateful that you care so much about my children. I don't find it appropriate for you to comment on my parenting, my holiday plans, how I'm running the household, whatever. I don't think it's appropriate. However, thanks anyways. I would like us to change the topic, because I want to enjoy my time with you, because when we're not talking about these types of things, I really do enjoy my time with you. Right? So be charitable when you do it.
I did. I like that. One of the things I was thinking about when you're talking is the question of, am I doing this out of, where's this coming from?
Where's it coming from?
Spite? Am I getting back at, what, is it coming from this goodness, this protection for myself, not know.
Well, everything is from goodness. We're inherently good, so everything we want is out of goodness. The question is like, okay, but where is this benefit coming from? And is it rage, for example?
Yeah.
Right? Or is this like so I can have inner peace? Again, with the goal of like so that I can love better.
Yes.
Right? If you're just setting boundaries because screw mom, like,
that's what
I
I'm
hate
talking.
her,
Yeah,
blah
that's
blah blah.
not
Right? Like what is that about? I would say that's
Yeah.
probably an invitation to do some deeper work because kind of like going back to like we all want goodness, and so there's something you're trying to do there. There's something really good you're trying to do there. Maybe your own self-protection, and maybe you're really hurt.
Yeah.
And that's actually dishonoring for you to settle for just revenge.
Yeah.
That's not actually true to what your heart is made for.
Right.
So,
Right.
I love that.
And families have that way because they know every button to push for you.
Oh gosh.
And you know every button to push for them.
Yes.
So, there's...
It's even worse. Oh my God.
It is.
Yes.
So how, we got the dinner, we know Thanksgiving's coming up. How do we prepare ourselves to have this openness, yet knowing their boundaries and just wanting to enjoy? Because to me I just think, to me it's food and relationships, that's what the day is.
That's all we need. All we need, really.
Right?
Relationships.
Happy food and relationships.
Yes. How do we prepare? Well, I think there's a couple of things you have to be aware of. So the first is, let's focus on time. How much time do you have? Because if you expect to not get triggered in a week,
that might be harder.
That is a really ambitious, good thing to want. And it's a good thing to want.
But
right. Recognizing recognizing where are you at. And so I would say, like, what's coming up for you during this holiday season? Is it a lot of anxiety? It might not be something that is something you should just be managing. It might be something you have to go into a little deeper as to why does this have this much power over me? Right. So that's something to consider. Does this maybe require some more personal work? But I think the other thing then would be knowing your boundaries, knowing your needs for self-care, being protective of them with those boundaries. And I think having kind of contingency plans for what's happening. So like self-care and boundaries for like just general holiday stuff. They just did a great episode on self-care. I'm gonna plug the podcast like featuring on. Yes, but they actually, it's very good. It's really thorough. I was very impressed. I was like, oh my gosh, they're like little therapists, but
Thank you, but we're not.
But they're not. I know.
Put that disclaimer out there.
Yeah, so I would give that a listen. It has really good practical advice. But kind of just in general, what am I going to need? But then kind of in those moments, okay, if mom starts crossing the line, what am I going to say? Right? We don't want reactions. We want, this kind of planned retrospective ability, or this ability to kind of go into something when you have retrospective insight, right? And say, okay, this is what's happened before. What would I want to do differently? How could I be different? How could I be charitable? What is that going to look like? Is that maybe having very, very brief conversations with very specific family members? Because that's actually all I can give. And that's okay that that's all you can give, right? Would you rather give an hour of being aggressive, or would you want 5 minutes of like, that was pleasant, and it's over.
It's over, done.
Until next year. Hopefully I can give 7 minutes next year, or whatever, right? So to be really self-compassionate, I think part of what makes that difficult oftentimes is more that we have expectations on ourselves. Right? This is what holidays are supposed to look like. This is what my kids are supposed to experience through me. This is what this person is asking of me or expecting of me. And also taking a look at that, like, why is that something you have to stick to? Because you're probably feeling safe sticking to that, but it's not actually good for you. Right? So those are kind of my initial thoughts.
I love that. Sticking. You've said it a couple times. I think that's so true about sticking with what we know, even though it's not good for us. How hard it is to break away from that and go.
It's hard to break. To break patterns and habits, for sure.
Right.
So just to equal time.
What?
I'm laughing. So what if the daughter's the one that bugs you? You're
so rude.
I know.
No. Oh my gosh. She's joking.
I know. Those that aren't on YouTube.
I know.
I'm kidding.
I know.
I just have to say it.
I know.
Equal time.
Oh, I know. So I guess, so you can do the verbal boundary.
Sure.
And then
level 1.
Yeah. Is there another level? Like, could you just say, I'm gonna walk away?
Right. And then that's what I was thinking is, if someone goes into your gate, right?
Yes. Yeah.
It would be like, oh my gosh, like they didn't follow my gate. And it's like, they should have. They definitely should have, right? They should have freaking stayed out of your house unless if you let them in, right? But like, what would you do if that kept happening? You would get a higher security gate.
Yes, you would.
Right. So, you would get a higher security gate, maybe a security guard, whatever, right? Like, if and as things kept not working, you would get more and more intense, right? You'd have like a guard dog by the end or whatever, right? Use an electric collar on that one.
Yes. That's interesting you say that, because it's been several years ago, but I knew I would probably be triggered by a family member. And I remember saying to Paul, would you keep near?
Yeah.
Right.
If you see this encounter.
He was your guard dog.
He was my guard dog. It made me think, and it was just this safe, and nothing ever happened, and it didn't need it.
Right.
But I needed that security
to
be able to relax and be present with everything going on.
And again, let's highlight so that you could be present, so that you could give, so that you could love, right? So that's always the question we're trying to do is, how do I best love myself and the ones around me? Love doesn't contradict. I love telling my clients that. Like, love doesn't contradict. The most loving thing for yourself is the most loving thing for your family, which is your most loving thing for the community and for the world. And so, like, that doesn't contradict. And so if you're feeling really cornered, there's something kind of off going on. And maybe it doesn't initially feel like love to set a boundary or tell your parents that, like, they can't talk about XYZ, right? But that's not actually teaching them healthy family relationships, right? There's probably backgrounds of your family that are coming into play that lead them to these unhealthy behaviors, that they maybe have undealt with pain or think these things are normalized, right? And that's and like they're never gonna discover that if you keep playing this script that they've given, right? This unhealthy script that they've given. And so maybe there's a short-term backlash, but you also have to think, what's the best way I love my family? And sometimes it is making them uncomfortable.
Oh, I love all of that stuff.
Well, I do. I don't know if she has any or not, but the book recommendations or anything for people, because we'll also pull that. We'll put that on our
and link them
link them for sure, because I think sometimes people just need to sit in the quiet.
Sit and read
or listen to it, whatever they do.
Oh, but I do want to go back to what you were saying about like level 1 and 2. So that's what I mean by the contingency plan is I would plan a couple levels of boundaries and start with the softest one, because you don't want to if you go in being like, we're not coming for Christmas, like that's like a pretty intense thing to do,
a little aggressive,
and maybe that's what's needed, but like it also helps when you know, like, I've done everything I can to not go into this more extreme boundary, but like they keep breaking into the gate, you know? So I have to now buy the 4 Rottweilers or whatever, right? Like,
and it's easier to escalate than de-escalate. Because once you've started up here, everybody's...
you can't really go back down.
So I just wanted to mention that. Okay, some books. So the one that I would most recommend if you're struggling with boundaries and kind of how do I navigate this stuff with my family and taking care of myself within that is the book called Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. And then a couple that my practice recommended. Shout out to Counseling for Life.
Shout out.
Another shout out. Would not be here without them. Quite literally, they gave me a job. They took a chance on me as an intern. Yeah, they're the best. I love my practice. Y'all are awesome. Megan and Stephanie, everybody. Okay, the other ones. Yes, shout out to my practice. So the ones that they mentioned, there's one called Good Boundaries and Goodbyes by Lisa Turgerst.
Okay.
Sorry, Lisa. And then I thought this was good. So this comes from our... she's a trauma specialist as well. Her name is Melanie Little. Cool. Great job, Melanie. So she specializes in addiction and other kind of stuff comes along with that a lot of the time. So if there's addiction or codependency in your family, right, which we definitely can see in some of these family patterns of Enmeshed and Disengaged. There's Codependent No More by Melody Beatty. Facing Codependency by Pia Melody.
Okay.
And then if you have borderline or narcissistic family members. So narcissistic is kind of a sense of superiority in a way that's pretty extreme. And then borderline are people who usually have a pretty severe history of trauma. So don't just be like, they have mood swings, they have borderline. We don't want to overdiagnose our family.
Not overdiagnose.
Yeah. Yes.
It's my hormones.
Yes. Oh my God.
Yeah.
But there are real families that have these
Yes.
problems.
There are.
Yes.
I'm not making light.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, and borderline are people who have kind of these. Usually, there's an intense fear of abandonment, and that leads to this kind of high pedestal relationship that then can, with like one small misstep, turns into like, I hate you, I can't stand you, you abandoned me, and so there's a lot of instability in those relationships. So those two, so the two that, or the book that she recommends for those is Stop Walking on Eggshells by Mason and Krieg.
Oh.
So thanks to them for all the book recommendations.
Those also,
Thank you.
really
That'll
good.
be, and we'll have links to that.
Yes,
Because
yeah.
Yeah,
It should apply to a lot of our listeners for sure.
Okay.
A lot of stuff that's awesome for people to really take in and hopefully prepare ahead of time with their boundaries and their contingency plans, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Then you can also slightly diagnose, am I in an enmeshed family? Or in a stray or disengaged family? Yes. Love it.
Or a healthy one.
Or a healthy one.
There's some out there.
There's some out there.
And it's pretty common for everyone to have a little bit of tendencies. So even if you're like, I feel like my family is okay for the most part, you might still struggle with like a little bit of it, and it's still helpful to kind of know what's the root issue to little boundaries, too many boundaries, that kind of thing. So you know how to best face that.
Definitely. Love it. And then, so this month, just keep listening. We'll have a lot of stuff on holidays, how to deal with them, how to prepare for them. So
Traditions and some fun.
Yes.
Yeah.
And we got some shout outs. Awesome. I will tag some people on Instagram. But yes, follow us on Instagram, YouTube, subscribe, email us questions. Always happy to hear from you guys.
All right. And we look forward to next week when we take a breath and take a listen.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of An Incomplete Guide to Personal Growth. There are many ways you can stay connected. Follow us on Instagram at An Incomplete Guide Podcast, where you can sign up for our email list and get posts that delve deeper into our weekly topics. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast page wherever you listen to your podcasts. We would really appreciate a rating and sharing us with your family and friends.
We're so glad you chose to spend your time with us and hope there was a thought, a resource, or a laugh that you can take on your journey. We'll be here every Tuesday for you to take a breath and take a listen.